I can't marry. You are too ugly, timid, and old-fashioned for me. I need someone better and classy.
Please don't do this to me. I love you so.
Everyone in Lagos knew her as the billionaire's only child, flawless, poised, a face that could launch brands and bring CEOs to their knees. But she had one secret mission: find a man who would love her without knowing her name. In a small town where nobody knew her name, the billionaire's daughter wore second-hand clothes and hid behind a crooked wig, all in search of a man who would love her without knowing her worth. To the world, she was Nkem, plain, awkward, forgettable. To the boardrooms of Nigeria's elite, she was Adaeze Nwankwo, heir to a multi-billion naira empire. Adaeze Nwankwo had it all: beauty, brains, and a birthright that made most men either worship her or tremble in fear. As the only daughter of Chief Titus Nwankwo, founder of Nwankwo conglomerates, she was next in line to run a multi-billion naira empire. But her father had one condition: marry a man who doesn't want you for your beauty or money. Find someone who sees your soul. Adaeze Nwankwo had been called many things: the face of the future, Nigeria's most eligible bachelorette, the daughter of gold. But none of those titles mattered to her anymore. She was 27, smart, strikingly beautiful, and yet painfully suspicious of love. Every suitor knew her surname before they knew her smile. And every conversation felt like an investment pitch: all roses, no roots. So one morning, after rejecting yet another oil tycoon's son, Adaeze made a decision that stunned even her closest friends. She would leave Lagos, drop her identity, and live simply, as Nkem, with thick eyeglasses and oversized clothes. She moved to Olura, a humble town where no one knew the name Nwankwo meant anything. She got herself placed as a junior administrative officer at one of her father's smaller branch offices there. No one questioned her resume; it was intentionally average. She wanted to be ordinary, until she met Obiora. Obiora had graduated from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, with a first-class degree in mechanical engineering. He should have had recruiters knocking at his door. But in Nigeria, talent without connections was like a seed planted on concrete. His mother sold vegetables by the roadside. His father, once a promising technician, now battled arthritis and debts. Obiora spent his days printing CVs, walking long distances to job interviews, only to be rejected or ghosted. When Adaeze, or rather, Nkem, first saw him, he was in the company compound, sweating under the sun as he fixed a broken generator, even though he wasn't a staff member. He volunteers for a maintenance officer just to stay around the premises. He didn't notice her at first. Why would he? She was dressed like someone with zero fashion sense and a past full of unfortunate events, but when she offered him her pure water sachet and sat with him in the shade, he smiled, and when he smiled, her disguise almost melted. They started talking. He never asked her about her past. He never made her feel like a project. He liked her wit, her quiet strength. Within 2 weeks, they became friends. Adaeze learned about his family, his dreams, his resilience, and she knew, this is the one. Without exposing herself, she pulled a few strings and got him an interview at the company where they both worked. When he got the job, he wept in gratitude. But not to her. He didn't know. Someone somewhere must have spoken on my behalf, he said. God sees even the forgotten. Obiora rose quickly. His brilliance was undeniable. Staff began to respect him, managers noticed him, and Adaeze watched him from behind her ugly face, her heart swelling with pride and fear. But how long could she keep this up? What would he say when he found out Nkem was Adaeze Nwankwo, that the building they worked in bore her family's initials? The midday sun shimmered gently over Olura as office staff trickled out for lunch, grumbling about the heat or the rising cost of things and food in the country. In a small restaurant behind the office building, two figures sat closer than most, Adaeze and Obiora. To the others, they were just two junior staff finding solace in each other's company. But to Adaeze, every lunch with Obiora was a special moment. A time when her guard could drop, her heart could dance, and she could imagine, for a moment, that her disguise had worked. that someone finally loved her for who she was, not who the world said she should be. She laughed too loudly at his jokes. Saved the biggest piece of beef for him. Sometimes she even cooked and brought extra for him. Obiora smiled, of course. He always smiled, but behind his charming grin and polished grammar was calculation, quiet, cold, careful. Obiora had grown up watching his mother struggle with his father to provide for the family. He knew the ache of empty cupboards and landlords who knocked with fists instead of words. So when a timid, odd-looking girl at work started being unusually kind, he didn't ask why. He leaned in. When his mother fell critically ill and the hospital demanded a deposit, he panicked. Salary hadn't come. His savings were non-existent. And just as he was about to give up, Adaeze transferred the full amount, with a sweet message, "Don't worry, Obiora. I'll always be here for you." He never asked for the money. But he never returned it either. From that day, Adaeze became more than a colleague. She was his safety net. She covered up for him when he came late, and always had a solution before he could ask. When they went out, to eat, to stroll, to window shop, Adaeze handled the bills. Effortlessly. Willingly, and Obiora played his role perfectly, attentive, affectionate, present. But beneath the surface, he whispered to himself, "She's naive. Too soft. Easy to manage." He had no idea he was dating the owner of the chair he sat on, the salary he received, the car that picked him up for training, or the office he walked into each morning. Adaeze saw the world in pastel colors when she was with him. She believed in the laughter, the long walks, the way he held her hand when they crossed busy roads. She told herself, maybe this is love, the real kind. The kind that sees past beauty. Past money. He doesn't even know who I really am, and yet he chose me. When people at work mocked her, the way she dressed, the way she walked, the way her eyeglasses magnified her eyes, Obiora was always by her side, defending her, or so she thought. What she didn't see was how he would roll his eyes behind her back, how he would whisper to colleagues, "I'm just helping her feel special, you know. She's harmless." But Adaeze didn't hear those whispers. She only heard his laughter, only saw the way he let her rest her head on his shoulder when she was tired, only felt the way his hands brushed hers across the lunch table. One Friday evening, as rain began to fall lightly over the rooftops, Adaeze walked home soaked, but smiling. Obiora had kissed her on the forehead. He had said, "I'm grateful for you." She clutched that sentence like a treasure. What she didn't know was that the next morning, that he would laugh with friends at a beer parlor and say, "That girl. She's nothing serious. Just a placeholder till I make it big." He didn't know he was talking about the daughter of Chief Adaeze Nwankwo, the future CEO of the company he hoped to rise in, the woman whose disguise was about to fall apart, not because she chose to, but because fate had started to stir, and fate doesn't keep secrets for long. The office clock struck 1:03 p.m. Most of the staff had already gone out for lunch, the aroma of fried rice and sizzling stew trailing behind them. Adaeze sat at their usual spot behind the building, her lunch untouched. Her heart thumped in her chest, not from nerves, but from excitement. She dialed his number. "Obiora," she said softly, a smile tugging at her lips, "why don't you move in with me?" There was a pause. "I have a 2-bedroom flat. It's close to the office. You can take the other room if you want. It will save you from getting all these queries over lateness. And, well, I'd like that too." She held her breath. Waiting, Obiora didn't think twice. "Yes," he replied. Almost too quickly. "Wow. That would be amazing. I'll move in this weekend." What she didn't hear was the smirk on his face. What she didn't see was the mental tally he made. No rent, no food bills, no transport stress. Jackpot. By the following Monday, Obiora was fully moved in. His worn-out duffel bag sat by the door. His scattered belongings quickly took up space. Adaeze, ever the caregiver, stocked the kitchen, washed his clothes, gave him the bigger room, and even wrote his CV anew to apply for internal promotions. They shared laughter, watched cheap movies, ate noodles late at night. From the outside, it was a humble beginning for a loving couple. For Adaeze, it felt like her fairy tale was unfolding in real time. She'd never lived with anyone before. Never felt this needed. She cooked his favorite meals, pressed his shirts before work, covered for him when he overslept. She called it love, he called it survival. 2 months passed. Then 3, Obiora changed, he came home late. He snapped at her, little things sparked big fights. Must you always wear these abode-sized skirts? He backed one night. You look like a grandmother. Adaeze froze, blinking. But you used to say you liked me like this. That was before I knew how bad your sense of style is, he scoffed. You're too local. Always looking like one of those women from the village markets. The words stung deeper than slaps. But Adaeze. She didn't shout. She didn't storm out, she simply nodded and said, maybe he's right. Maybe he just wants me to grow. She began changing. Bit by bit, she bought more fitted clothes, subtle makeup, lighter wigs. She tried new perfumes, but the more she tried to fit his image of perfection, the more Obiora seemed irritated by her efforts. The compliments never came, only more insults. You still look old-fashioned. You're trying too hard, he muttered one morning. Not even looking up from his phone, she retreated quietly into the kitchen, her heart heavy. Her soul confused. Why does it feel like the more I try, the further he drifts? She thought, isn't this what he wanted? But that wasn't the issue, not really. Something else was happening. Something Adaeze didn't see coming, something that would soon change everything. The staff canteen buzzed with excitement. Folks paused halfway to mouths. Conversations shifted mid-sentence. Even the normally grumpy security guard was smiling. The manager stood tall, pressing his palms together like he was holding in a secret too sweet to keep. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, we've just received word from headquarters. The CEO's daughter will be visiting this branch soon. Gasps rippled through the room like thunder on water. Very soon, he added with emphasis, so everyone must be on their best behavior. We don't want to embarrass ourselves in front of the future of Nwankwo conglomerates. The room erupted into murmurs. Someone whispered, I heard she's stunning. Another added, rich, cultured, and single. One of the accountants grinned, Omo. Who knows? If you smile well enough, she might carry you back to Lagos. Obiora sat at the far end of the room, his spoon frozen midair, his heart thudding, his thoughts raced. The CEO's daughter. Here. In this forgotten branch. This is it. This is my chance. That evening, Obiora stared at himself in the mirror of Adaeze's small bathroom. He straightened his shirt collar, smoothed down his hair, practiced a smile, a confident, charming smile. Adaeze, he called out casually, do you know anything about the CEO's daughter coming? She shook her head from the kitchen, struggling to hide her knowing smile. No. I haven't heard anything yet. He muttered. I hear she's classy. Probably nothing like this. She turned slowly. Like what? He looked her up and down with thinly veiled disdain. You know. Dusty wigs, market skirts, village vibes. Adaeze's hands trembled slightly, but she nodded and turned back to her pot of rice. It wasn't the first insult. But this one pierced deeper, because she finally understood. Obiora didn't want her to become better. He wanted someone else entirely. For the next few days, Obiora was a man transformed, but not in the way Adaeze had prayed for. He began ironing his clothes with precision, brushing his shoes until they gleamed like marble floors. He started working overtime, not for promotion, but for visibility. Whenever the manager walked in, Obiora stood straighter, smiled harder, spoke with a new accent that sounded like someone who just returned from the UK, even though he had never left Anambra State. He even practiced how he would approach the CEO's daughter. "Good afternoon, Ma. I must say, I've heard of beauty, but I never believed it could work until now." He imagined her smile. He imagined their wedding. He imagined moving into mansions, signing deals, making speeches at conferences. He imagined a life far, far away from his current reality, far away from the timid, ugly girl who made his food, cleaned his clothes, and adored him like no other. He didn't realize that the very woman he was discarding like old cloth was the one he hoped to seduce. Adaeze watched him quietly. Observed his sudden obsession with grooming, the extra spritz of cologne, the mirror pep talks. The way he started calling her madam mockingly. The way he flinched when she touched him, as though her hands were made of shame, and she said nothing, not yet, because what Obiora didn't know, couldn't even imagine, was that the woman he was preparing to meet in sparkling glory was already living in his house, washing his clothes, carrying his dreams in her chest, and weeping silently into her pillow.